fantastic panel. The topic of this high-level panel, as you know from the program, is working together for the promotion of the rule of law, good practices, and challenges. On this panel, we are blessed with those who are serving in office, those who come from the legal sector, the NGO sector, who represent global religious networks, academia, are in religious leadership, and are also active at the local level. And I'm sure I've also missed out many other backgrounds and experiences because we really have a wonderful panel with us. The premise of this panel is that upholding the rule of law is essential for the guarantee of the human rights of all, the human rights of citizens, non-citizens, stateless persons, migrants, minorities, and majorities alike. The rule of law, of course, runs counter to the arbitrary exercise of power. It calls for the accountability of all institutions, individuals, and groups to the same laws, and even the accountability of the lawmakers and the leadership. The rule of law is intertwined with equality before the law and the equal protection of the law for everyone. Those laws under the rule of law, of course, include international law and human rights law and standards. It follows from that the protections that flow from the rule of law include those of freedom of thought, conscience, religion, and belief. As UN Special Rapporteur on freedom of religion or belief, I am often reminded of the urgency and critical importance of freedom of religion or belief to everyone around the world. The right to have, adopt, and change religion or belief, the right to manifest religion or belief, not only in private but also in public, not only alone but along with others, in worship, observance, teaching, and practice. And under that umbrella of worship, observance, teaching, and practice, we see in the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights its interpretation in General Comment 22 and in the 1981 UN Declaration that manifestation includes many freedoms: the right to teach children, the right to teach our religion or belief, to share our religion or belief with others without coercion and inducement, the right to gather in places of worship, charitable institutions, and organizational activities. Yet in many parts of the world, we find that religion or belief is restricted. In this panel, we are going to have a reality check from all these various sectors and expert panelists regarding the critical importance of dialogue and cooperation as a means to ensuring accountability and compliance with the law, which requires the independence of the judiciary, of course. And in this way, we can protect the rights of minority and majority alike. And we will also hear about good practices and challenges from around the world. If I briefly introduce each panelist, they will each have 4 minutes to give a synthesis of their rich experience. So Dr. Schermacher is Archbishop Professor Thomas Paul Schermacher, who serves as the Secretary General of the World Evangelical Alliance, representing 600 million members in 143 national alliances. He is also the President of the International Council of the International Society for Human Rights and a professor and speaker who teaches around the world. Over to you, Dr. Schermacker.
It is an honor and privilege to be the first speaker on this topic, even so you're all aware that it is impossible to speak 4 minutes about a topic that shapes the everyday life of billions of people. The German Constitution starts with the words, "in responsibility before God and all men." You know, Germany is a very secular country. These words do not have any legal value. You cannot use them at court. They just stand there. A commentary, a very famous commentary on the question why it is there, says, it reminds the state that it is built on foundations it cannot create itself. When we speak about the rule of the law and the question of religious communities, religion and belief on the one side and the state, the parliaments, etc. on the other side, both sides need each other. Both sides are, let me say, use Christian words here, direct to God. They don't depend on each other. I would add the family as a third topic, but this is not our topic here. The state has a right in itself. It does not need the permission from religious leaders to exist. It exists there for peace, for harmony, for order, the rule of law. But where does the law come from? What is the moral base for all of this? This is not decided on by the parliaments. The parliaments don't raise children and give them a moral stability. They don't build up whole cultures. It is the religious communities, it is the beliefs that shape this. And this is why we need both. The religious communities need, let me say this very clearly because we do not have much time, sometimes the state and the rule of the law to be protected from other religions. If only the religions would be in the world, very often freedom of religion and belief would not be protected. And the big ones always would win and the small ones would lose. That is the one side. We need to assure this again and again. The rule of law is needed for the life of religious communities. But it's the other way around too. Where does the law come from? Where comes the moral backing come from? Where does it come from that the vast majority of people in the world accept the laws that are made by parliaments? This is something that goes back to the religious communities, to the belief systems, to the moral values of the people. And if they fade away, if they are not available, if they fight over with each other day and night, a country cannot be ruled. Because if you have a rule of law and everybody disagrees with it, you cannot put the whole population into prison, can you? You even cannot put 20% of the population in prison. You need a certain given exception of the rule of law. So, a practical example, in Germany, we have this problem that people at specific times will destroy, burn, I do all kinds of things to synagogues or to mosques. Who is responsible to stop this? Even if the Christian churches are not in favor of it, they cannot stop it. They are not the state. The only one that can stop it is the rule of law. If there would be not the rule of law now checking into it, who investigates who were the people who did it, we would have to ask people to take revenge themselves. We would have to tell a mosque, there is no one who will help you, help yourself. So get some armed guards, and if someone comes, shoot him. The rule of law assures that bad deeds like this that the destroying of freedom of religion and belief is under the rule of law, under the control of the state, and that is, it's impossible to have religious freedom without it. Yet on the other side, once again, it is the moral values that the religious and the belief communities give that make this possible. Because if you have a law that speaks about freedom of religion and belief, and 90% of the population don't want this, no police in the world can assure freedom of religion or belief. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Archbishop Schermacher. Professor Dr. Fadi Dao is the Executive Director of Globe Ethics. He's a professor of the geopolitics of religions, and he's been working on a research project at the University of Geneva since 2021. He has contributed to the foundation of many civil society organizations, previously having served as the CEO of the Adian Foundation, working for diversity management and peace building, and I think there are participants from the Adian Foundation in the audience. In 2020, he received the Elevate Prize for Global Thinkers and Change Makers, and he's a good friend. Over to you, Dr. Dao.
Thank you, Nadila. Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon. This is a privilege to address both a community formed by both politicians and religious leaders. This represents a huge force in the room, and I would like to congratulate the IPU and Religions for Peace for having partnered together to discuss this key question of freedom of religion and belief. Let me start by asking you if you already hear this expression, lawful yet awful. What I mean by this is that the rule of law is the base of building peaceful societies, but it is not enough to live together. And this is why, in my very few minutes I have in this introduction, I would like to say that we are here in this room representing two great, as I mentioned, forces, political, religious communities together. But the real force that join us is the value system, the common values that we believe in, and we struggle to make them happen in our societies, and not the power that we have, either political or religious. If you look at the global surveys about trust in the world, unfortunately, and pardon my frank speech here, you would see that politicians are the least trusted category, and the scientists are the most trusted category. And religious leaders also are more in the least trusted group and not the most trusted group. Social media is more trusted than religious leaders. I'm sure if we look at more recent surveys, we will find that ChatGPT would be more trusted than both political and religious leaders. We live in a big global challenge of mistrust of institutions, mistrust in leaders, and this is why we need to rebuild ethical leadership. Ethical leadership on the religious level and ethical leadership on the political level. And for freedom of religion and belief is a key example where we can show and demonstrate ethical leadership, because four cannot be achieved only by law. We need laws to protect the freedom of religion and belief and conscience and expression and thoughts, but we need also values to make that our communities, religious communities and citizenship communities, also believer in the added value of having form in our society, freedom of religion and belief. So we need more trust to face mistrust. We need also to collaborate for the common good between political and religious leadership to give the right testimony, I would say, for our societies, that we are not looking for domination, either from a political perspective or from a religious perspective, but we are looking all together for the common good of our societies. And then we need also lots of integrity, because we live in a world where we have more and more populist, opportunistic, not only politics, but also leadership, unfortunately, including sometimes in the religious communities. So we need further integrity also to make sure that we are serving this value for everybody. It's not freedom of religion and belief for those who believe like me. It's freedom of religion and belief for everybody, including those who do not believe also. And this is the way to prove that we are really joining our forces based on values and not based on power dynamic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dao, for reminding us that the day we disassociate values from religion and belief, or indeed from community and the rule of law, we are indeed impoverished. Ms. Fernanda San Martin Carazo is a former Bolivian MP and former chair of the Committee on Gender Rights of the Chamber of Deputies of Bolivia, the International Panel of Parliamentarians for Freedom of Religion or Belief is very fortunate to now have her as their director. She holds honors degrees in law, in management and public policy from universities in Spain and Bolivia, and also has a diploma in negotiation and alternative methods of conflict resolution. IPP-FORB and IPU share many common missions in relation to this topic, and it's an honor to hear from you, Fernanda.
Thank you very much, Nazila, and I'm honored to be here as a speaker, and I thank the invitation of IPU. Only working together we can advance freedom of religion or belief for all worldwide. And that is what we do in IPP-FORB. IPP-FORB is an international network of parliamentarians with 350 members, former and sitting MPs from around 97 countries around the world. Our work has three main axes. One is a capacity building. In all our events, we involve a diverse community of expert practitioners, academics, and other relevant stakeholders who develop tailored support for parliamentarians. And that's one of our main goals. Network building. Network building contributes to bringing together like-minded advocates for freedom of religion or belief by connecting parliamentarians across geographical, religious, and political lines. We nurture the culture of exploring challenges and opportunities amongst parliamentarians and relevant stakeholders. And we support parliamentarians by creating these platforms for networking peer-to-peer support, learning and interaction at the global, regional, and national level. In doing so, we partner with select organizations and networks at the regional level. And also we do some advocacy and research, and we support parliamentarians in their own initiatives to advance this human right in their local context. We also orchestrate opportunities for parliamentarians to join others in advocacy, because we think just working together is what will bring this freedom of religion or belief agenda forward. We also, of course, have in our network and in all our events, we have civil society organizations which they relate to parliamentarians, and they can work together in a plural and diverse environment. Our core values that are the main important values that we share are equality, non-discrimination, and diversity. Building democracy is a joyful task. A good relationship between civil society and parliament is important to enhance the quality of democracy. Building trust between civil society and parliamentarians, it's crucial to achieve our mutual goals. The importance of trust has long been emphasized by social and political theorists from Locke and Tocqueville to Putnam, who considers social networks contain value for individuals. And that's what we stand for and in our goal of advancing freedom of religion or belief for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It was so complementary also to what Fadi spoke about earlier, that pluralism and diversity includes a whole variety of religions and beliefs around the world, and you called for the importance of cooperation between different actors. It's now a particular pleasure to hand the floor over to Speaker Marichel Batet. She was first elected to the Congress of Deputies of Spain in 2004 and has been its speaker since May 2019. She hails from Catalonia and was a Minister for Territorial Policy and Public Function from June 2018 until election as Speaker. She was trained as a lawyer and taught law previously, and the floor is yours, Speaker Batet.
Thank you very much, Nasila. Muy buenas tardes a todos. Un cariñoso saludo a Su Majestad el Rey de Marruecos y a su consejero. Muchas gracias por estar aquí. Presidente Rashid, un placer que...
Well, thanks very much indeed for giving me the floor, for the invitation extended to me. I would like to thank you immensely, Mr. Pacheco, dear colleagues, dear ladies. I would like, first and foremost, to thank immensely for the hospitality extended to us by the UAP and by Morocco, and I would like to express my congratulations for the magnificent organization today, and this is a message in itself, a land of tolerance. Morocco is a land of hospitality, as has been underscored during the opening session. This is a coexistence, a land of coexistence involving the Muslims and the Jews and the various religions present over the land. The rule of law, this is a human creation with which we ensure peace within the communities, and also permitting people to exercise their freedom, the freedom of worship, particularly as has been highlighted, more particularly with regard to the rule of law. If man really were angels, then the state wouldn't be necessary. The state is necessary because it avoids problems within a community. But the state as a rule of law really needs to be neutral, and there are basic principles, the principle of neutrality of the state, more particularly with regard to religious worshipping, constitutional system in Spain, as well as in other places. There is really the separation of powers, more particularly, and needs to be done over respect, equality, and autonomy. And this way, the relationship holding between institutions is quite important, and religious institutions, even though this needs to be a clear-cut principle, more particularly with regard to facilitating the coexistence and involving the various creeds and beliefs, and so to guarantee fully and squarely the worship. This is quite indispensable in the building of any democracy, particularly, or in the construction of an edifice that is a common edifice, particularly. So now we know very well that the freedoms really the state shoulders the responsibility to ensure protection of the community, and so the state needs to cooperate with the communities, more particularly, and this is based on various contracts and also various agreements, and there is a special regime for enhancing the protection of people and cooperation agreements with the the Christian church as well as with the Jewish community. And so the second aspect, more particularly with regard to the protection of the religious freedom, more particularly in order to make it possible for people to grow and prosper individually, particularly, and so to fight against the discourses of hatred and discrimination. And the state does its contribution, more particularly in order to enhance the protection of the individual and removing and staving off the threats, more particularly encouraging the freedom of worship. And so I do believe that we need to work together in collaboration for boosting the tolerance-based policies, more particularly. And so we need to continue working together, particularly as a final solution. Religious leaders have put in place quite a lot of substantial work for promoting dialogue, focusing on eliminating hatred and discrimination, and they have been quite influential through the discourses, particularly as was suggested earlier. We need to spread networks, and this will contribute to promote tolerance. And also we need to develop cooperation involving other communities that have the same, that are working on the same project. And so we need also to really bring together the MPs and the religious people together through the internet is a platform, more particularly, that is quite helpful. And so we need to do away with those behind doing apologies of xenophobia, and so we need to put in place a living together policy that needs to incorporate pluralism, and also everybody needs to be recognized as such, and also everybody deserves respect and protection wherever he comes from or she comes from, or regardless of their religion. And so there is need to really to engage in a spirit of cooperation, more particularly in order to discharge our duties properly. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Merci.
Together in our full diversity. It is not for the state to limit the number of recognized religions or to declare some unrecognized or intolerable. The dignity, equality, and respect of all must be upheld. It's not a closed list that we will decide what religion you belong to and which ones are recognized, and we will manage it. The state, as you suggest, has a facilitative role in order to an impartiality that allows respect and the rights of all to be upheld. Thank you so much for that, Speaker Batet. The next speaker is Mr. Norbert Tancano, who's a specialist in African parliamentary organizations and the winner of the 2020 Prize for an Outstanding Parliamentary Official, awarded by the Parliamentary Assembly of La Francophonie. He is a lawyer by training and profession, and he's currently the Executive Secretary of the G5 Sahel Interparliamentary Committee, bringing together the parliaments of the Sahel region with its headquarters in Niger. Over to you, Mr. Tancano.
Monsieur Tancano. Well, thanks very much indeed for giving me the floor. We are being asked to speak about the rule of law, the role of the religious leaders in the promotion and the preservation of the rule of law. And so if we notice today more than ever before, or everything that is taking place in the world, we need to say that when we move forward, we may backpedal as well. Particularly without the rule of law, at least we are going to backpedal. And so at the African level and the Sahel level that I do know better, the rule of state, the rule of law is defined as a place whereby everybody is treated on an equal footing and is subject to the law. When we look at the security crisis in the Sahel, and when we look at what's taking place beyond the Sahel, that we have the impression that there is a challenge. The there is a challenge for this, the rule of law. What is the role played by the Parliament for the promotion and the preservation of the rule of law, more particularly, whether at the national level or at the international levels? The Parliament has quite many levers. At the international level, more particularly on the occasion of the General Assemblies of the UAP, there is the possibility to float resolutions and recommendations. An MP in the recent assembly has put forth a resolution for controlling erosion, and so unfortunately it didn't see really a way for implementation. And so at least if it was adopted, if this was adopted, if this rule, if this resolution was adopted, then it could pave the way for eradicating erosion. And when our houses are being burned, or when a church is being burned, or when we attack a mosque, this is going to increase violence. And MPs can adopt and draft appropriate legislation to fight against these things and implement the resolutions that have been adopted. These resolutions can have an effect, a positive effect on a national level. At the national level, outside what has been said so far in the parliamentary report of the UAIP, bringing to bear on the religions and their role, there are quite many practices and quite many methods that the Parliament can adopt, particularly boosting the dialogue within in the community of MPs themselves, or particularly auditing professional leaders, particularly during the working commissions, and by organizing open days on interfaith. Quite many MPs engage in such activity, engaging in interfaith activities. In the Sahel, there are quite many extremist groups, terrorist groups particularly, that wishes to install the Islamic Caliphate. This goes against the freedom of thinking, freedom of worshipping, and so when we think about this, we feel not at ease, and so in the countries of the Sahel, up to 80% of the population is of Islamic origin. Why Islamicize a population that is already adopting Islam as a religion? But by killing children and by killing their mothers and by burning mosques and genuinely. There is a challenge of the state and the rule of law, particularly in the Sahel state. When we say what is the role to be played by religious leaders, by MPs, in the case of the Sahel countries, this role is very delicate to shoulder. Particularly, we're not talking about religious freedom or the freedom of thinking. It's up to the international community and to the parliaments to support the Sahel MPs. So in order to really secure their right to life, more particularly, and this is quite important development. This is all I wanted to contribute with. Particularly, I would like to thank you immensely for your attention, ladies and gentlemen.
Mr. Tancano, thank you for taking us right back to the question to this panel about the role of parliamentarians alone and along with others, and the efforts they can undertake to ensure this freedom for everybody. Indeed, freedom of religion or belief is not only the right to worship, observance, teaching, and practice, but also for there not to be any discrimination on grounds of religion or belief, and also no violations of human rights perpetuated in the name of religion or belief. Now, we are going to end with a very powerful local example. I'm going to hand over the floor shortly to Imam Salahuddin Barakat, who is a Swedish imam of Lebanese origin who grew up in Malmö in Sweden. He has studied some of the foremost theologians and scholars of the Islamic world. He teaches Islamic spirituality, theology, legal methodology, Quranic tradition, hadith doctrine and jurisprudence. He is active on countering racism and extremism and represents the Malmö Muslim Network and is co-founder, with the rabbi next to him, of Amana, the Jewish and Muslim Trust and Faith Project at Malmö. He will be joined, of course, by Rabbi Moshe David Hakohen, who's a community rabbi in Malmö, Sweden, where he lives with his wife and family. He grew up in a settlement in Israel. He became active in Interfaith Dialogue. He focuses on bridging and countering violence through religion and is the co-founder of Amana, which works to counter, amongst other things, anti-Semitism and Islamophobia by creating trust between the Jewish and Muslim communities and the wider society. The perfect partners to parliamentarians in Sweden, I'm sure. So I hand over the floor to the two of you. You can divide your time as you wish, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you to the host to the conference, and specifically to the Moroccan Parliament and the Kingdom, who bring forward the historical Muslim-Jewish relations from the past to the present day. Today we'll bring you a case example from Sweden, where civil society and religious leadership had the need to step forward where the law failed to protect the minorities, and therefore we were forced to step forward. Less than half a year ago, at the end of January, an horrific act of violence occurred in Stockholm, the capital of Sweden, an act that was backed and protected by Swedish law. A Danish provocateur was granted permission by the Swedish police to burn the Quran as an act of freedom of expression, which he promptly did. This was not the first or last time that this occurred in Sweden. Bringing in international politics, this time the provocateur burned the Quran in front of the Turkish embassy, causing outrage throughout the Muslim world. Though the Swedish lawmakers as well as police wished to prevent it, they did not have the legal cause to do so. For us in the Jewish community, reflecting from our tragic long history of persecution, which included many times the burning of our sacred books, it was very clear to us that this was a dangerous act of hatred that must be stopped. Together with Amana, the Muslim-Jewish Partnership of Trust, all the Nordic Jewish communities from Sweden, Finland, Denmark, and Norway, all united in a historical statement clearly condemning the act, quoting Heinrich Heine, "In a place where books are burned, people will burn as well." For us, it was clear that such an act was meant to threaten the Muslim community and had no connection to freedom of any sort, rather abused the law in order to promote hatred and racism. For years, Amana has been working closely to create a trusted partnership between the Muslim and Jewish minority communities, working for each other against anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. It took many years of trust building to lead to this important act of solidarity. Following this statement, Amana has been engaged in discussion with Swedish Parliament as well as experts of law regarding the legal definitions of hate speech and freedom of expression, bringing forward the views of our minority communities. And I pass the microphone to my dear colleague and partner.
Thank you very much. Of course, after this happened, it didn't stop there. It didn't stop with the Quran burning, but it actually continued with false rumors going around saying that the Jews are favored in Sweden and you can burn the Quran, but you cannot burn the Torah. And the Swedish law makes difference between different groups. And this, of course, instigated several Muslims that wanted to show this and manifest this hypocrisy or claimed hypocrisy. So they actually applied with the police to burn the Torah. So we got a new scenario. One minority or people from one minority wanting to burn the book of another minority. And we saw here very effectively how the work of Amana during the years building trust, the Muslim community actually stepped up because the applications were sent in to the Swedish police and the police actually gave them an okay. They could burn the Torah just as they could burn the Quran. But of course, the Muslim community couldn't just stand by and look at this happening, so the Muslim organizations actually sent people, sent imams, mediators to these persons who had applied with the police and convinced them that this is not the way forward. It is not the way forward of one group burning another group. And just imagine how society would look if everybody's gonna burn everybody else's books in front of everybody's embassies. The craziness of such a society. So through this work that we had been able to do within the Muslim and Jewish society, we were able to mobilize and take action within the minorities, strengthening each other, helping each other, standing by each other when the law wasn't standing by minorities. And thus we were able to not just strengthen each other, but strengthen our society in Sweden as a whole. And I would end with thanking the IPU and the Parliament of Morocco and the Kingdom, His Royal Highness, may Allah keep him safe, for this magnificent event. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give it tawfiq and blessings. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What an excellent example that regardless of the structures and laws at every level of society, how powerful the grassroots can be in creating trust. And perhaps actually that's the foundation of community, the active grassroots standing in solidarity and support of one another. I'm going to hand over the floor to Mike from the IPU to announce the first 3 speakers from the floor. Each of you will have exactly 2 minutes or less to speak so that we can take all of the submissions and requests to speak from the floor. Whilst you're coming up, I will see if there's anybody who has a burning need to speak from the panel in response to one another, and otherwise we will wait for the first speaker from the floor.
Okay, so for this segment, participants are invited to remain in their seats. The cameras will find you in the room. So the first 3 speakers are Mr. Pornpech Wichicholchai, President of the Senate of Thailand, followed by Mr. Andrea Benzo, followed by Mr. Gaudencio Mahabamesu of Equatorial Guinea.
Whilst you are being found, does anybody from the panel want to come back on what the other panelists have said?
Yes.
So we've found the speaker from the floor, have we?
Yes.
Okay, yes,
that's
please.
my turn. Honorable Chair, distinguished delegates, dear colleagues. Since the beginning of the nation, Thailand is indeed blessed with multicultural richness and a long history of diversity and tolerance. While predominantly Buddhist and secular, Thai society is a multi-faith community where people of different religions and cultures have lived together, side by side, in peace and harmony for centuries. The Constitution of Thailand was written to reaffirm our commitment to equality, inclusion, and the rule of law by guaranteeing the fundamental freedom of worship for all Thai citizens and prohibits unjust discrimination based on religious identity or belief. It also obligates the state to protect other religions and upholds the Thai monarch as the patron of all faiths. Inside the Thai parliament, religions have never been an issue. When a Muslim MP was elected as Speaker of the lower house in 1996, and since 2019, a healthy number of non-Buddhist MPs have been well represented in both chambers. The Parliament of Thailand truly believes that the power of cultural pluralism can be used as a constructive force to break down walls of division and unite different faiths through interreligious cooperation based on shared universal values. Parliamentarians can be a living model for combating all forms of intolerance and cultivating the culture of peace and reconciliation for the better future of humanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. We will now give the floor to Ambassador Benzo. We will take 5 speakers from the floor before opening it to the panel.
We have Ambassador Benzo in the room. Okay, he's there at the back. Please use your microphone and the camera will find you. Please begin, yes. If you have a microphone near you, please press the button and begin talking. The camera will find you.
In the name of Allah, most merciful, most compassionate. Gentleman is speaking in Farsi.
دو مورد مسئله وجود قانون در رابطه با آزادی اعتقادات و ادیان و هم چگونگی تطبیق قوانین. هر دو مورد موارد اساسی است که هم سیاسیون و هم متنفذین قومی، بزرگان قومی و هم متنفذین دینی و اعتقادی میتونن در راستای تطبیق از این نقش بازی بکنن. اما متاسفانه که در کشور ما اعتنا داره، نه قانون رعایت میکنه، نه قانون وجود داره، نه پارلمان وجود داره، نه نهاد انتخابی وجود داره.
So in our country there is no legislation and lawmaking processes currently, and we have to be able to actually put forward some policies in order to encounter these sort of threats and in order to actually be able to actually fight with these problems.
چه برسه به اینکه در اوج زمینه آزادی بیان وجود داشته باشه، آزادی اعتقاد و دین وجود داشته باشه. از دین اسلام متاسفانه یک تصویر وارونه به دنیا نشان دادن متاسفانه. به این دلیل ما امیدوار هستم که در این عرصه هم دنیا توجه داشته باشه. تشکر میکنم.
I don't have the voice here.
البته ما انتظار داشتیم که سفیر ایتالیا اندریا بنزو سخنگوی اون قسمت باشن، ولی بالاخره خوشحالیم که صدای شما رو هم شنیدیم. Could I now give the floor to Ambassador Andrea Benzo, if he is here? Unfortunately, the lighting means we can't even see you.
What did she say?
So if I don't hear Ambassador Benzo, we'll move to the third speaker. If the lighting could be adjusted so we might see the participants, that would be really helpful. Let's move on to the third speaker, and Mike will kindly introduce the other 2 speakers.
So the next speaker is Mr. Gaudencio Mahaba Mesu, Speaker of the Chamber of Deputies of Equatorial Guinea. followed by Mariana Hnip, President of the European Network on Religion and Belief, and then after that, Mr. Jacob Francis Mudenda, Speaker of the Parliament of Zimbabwe. So, Mr. Mahaba Mesu.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur la Présidente.
Chair, dear attendees, ladies and gentlemen, honorable presidents, honorable President of the Council of the Kingdom of Morocco, honorable MPs, ladies and gentlemen, taking the floor in this parliamentary conference, allow me first and foremost to express my appreciation and gratitude, and to congratulate more particularly on behalf of Equatorial Guinea, congratulate the Kingdom of Morocco and its parliament for the hospitality extended to us since our arrival in this beautiful country, more particularly in this beautiful city of Morocco. This parliamentary conference, co-organized by the UIP and Morocco and Peace, and with the support of the Alliance of the United Nations Alliance for Peace, constitutes the most important forum for promoting the points of views and sharing relevant information, particularly of people from different extractions, particularly on boosting religious dialogue, particularly for our distinguished participants. Ladies and gentlemen, the Declaration of St. Petersburg of 2017, bringing to bear on the promotion and on cultural pluralism and peace via interreligious dialogue, recognizes that the interfaith dialogue really is a keystone for promoting cultural pluralism. The parliaments of the world, as representative of the world, need to commit themselves for promoting this opening and for more inclusive communities. As everybody knows, the religious dialogue has historically started during the first parliament that took place in Chicago in 1893. During this session, interfaith religion convened, so the seed of the movement was sown particularly and continues to germinate. And we remember the fourth edition of the Parliaments of Religion during the Forum of Cultures in Barcelona back in 2004, which was the most popular and diversified action of the forum. In the same vein of ideas, we know UNESCO that considers religion as an expression of culture and religious freedom, as is part of the interfaith dialogue. And so United Nations considers religion as an inalienable part of humanity, and so which brings us to work together for the preservation and the conservation of this heritage, guaranteeing therefore our future generation destiny. And so it's quite important to inform you that the Constitution of my country recognizes to the citizens the freedom of religion. It adopted a law, particularly on the religious freedom back in 1992 in my country, to which is added the universal ratification of the human rights adopted in 1948 by the United Nations, as well as within this same context, the parliamentary institution of my country back in 2017 draft or put really a celebration, and people meet to celebrate.
Thank you so much for that rich contribution.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur la Présidente.
Thanks very much indeed.
I do apologize that time is so short and appreciate your cooperation. Thank you.
We have many speakers waiting to take the floor, so please keep your interventions to 2 minutes. So the next speaker is Ms. Mariana Nip, President of the European Network on Religion and Belief, followed by Speaker Mudenda of Zimbabwe. Do you have Mariana Nip? Okay.
Thank you. I think I'm scheduled for tomorrow, so since I will be speaking anyhow, I'm happy to give my place to someone else, and I think we need this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Speaker Mudenda?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. First of all, I think it is important that we must understand the concepts we are dealing with. The rule of law, in fact, means that we have to respect the equality of human beings or citizens in our country. Therefore, the application of the law should ensure that there is no discrimination, as well as ensuring that those that rule are not arbitrary. My understanding is that the rule of law is based on the respect of human rights, which must be seen in our Constitution under the Bill of Rights. And it is important that members of Parliament explain to the electorate what is contained in the Constitution as far as the Bill of Rights is concerned. Leaders in the church, they too have the responsibility to explain what the rule of law is, because the people that go to their churches or abide by their religious foundations must respect the rule of law. It is important, therefore, that the parliamentarians as well as leaders of religion have a meeting of minds, because their common denominator is the citizenry in their respective countries. I so submit, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you so much. We will take 2 more speakers from the floor before opening it to our panelists. So, Mr. Enrique Montes.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. La Asociación Miraísmo Internacional es una ONG en estatus consultivo con Naciones Unidas desde 2015, cuyo trabajo se ha enfocado en gran medida hacia el derecho a la libertad de religión o creencia.
The association which I represent here is thrilled to be here. We would like to laud the work of the conveners for organizing this conference, and more particularly would like to thank the panelists of experts. And so we have responded positively. We have really heard the presentations and we celebrate the freedom, more particularly the goal is to promote the coexistence in peace on the basis of a joint understanding in all the fields of endeavor of the community. Religion and law are really applied through a number of things, and there is also extremism really that is implemented in the name of religion, and also there is also the hatred discourse, and so people are exposed to, they suffer from xenophobia, intolerance, and this is the reason why we need to recall that peace is still vulnerable, particularly, and so the social educators and leaders need to be involved, and religious leaders need to shoulder this responsibility more particularly so that education be in harmony with the requirements of the pluralistic community and based on living together while respecting each other. And so we need to be creative and innovative as far as education is concerned, but at the same time by implementing all the scientific breakthroughs, particularly, and so availing ourselves of the science and research in order to really enhance the well-being. And so respect and tolerance can participate fully and squarely in the building of peace, particularly depriving the community from this information can impact negatively on the community and on the state. All countries need to work together and pool their efforts in order to really to educate the children, more particularly by teaching them tolerance and respect. And this is how and is conducive to move forward and make headway. The role played by educational institution and role played by the parliament, more particularly, they need to reconsider the diversity, religious diversity that will make it possible to have ensure coexistence and depending on all these elements. Thank you. Back to you, ma'am.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Madame Adjidiara Mergan Kanouté of the National Assembly of Senegal. Then the panelists will respond for some time. So after the panelists have spoken, the next two speakers will be Mr. Leo Igwe of Humanist International, and then I believe Mr. Benzo is in the room, so we'll come back to him. But do we have Madame Mergan Kanouté?
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Modérateur.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to underscore that convening such a conference on inter-religious dialogue is quite an important thing. And so quite an important symbol. Africa is a land of where people are attached to their roots, particularly, and they are attached to their the rule of law, and so inclusion and striking a balance of religious tolerance can promote the rule of law, particularly in our African countries, and also with the support of MPs and parliaments. And so the parliamentary chambers are called upon to contribute to this religious tolerance. Balance is quite an important from our eyes and will contribute to promote the rule of law, particularly in a multi-confessional state such as Senegal. And so laws need to be drafted more particularly in order to enhance the religious belonging and affiliation. And so it's the same. Laws of with a local content need to involve local and grassroots communities, particularly in the exploitation of minerals. The National Office Against Corruption really needs to be, his role needs to be enhanced. Senegal has been ruled for the last 20 years by a president who belonged to a minority. There is in Senegal a freedom of religion. Religious tolerance is the rule of law for a country. Up to 96% is of Islamic extraction. And this is quite an example to emulate by many countries. All beliefs are recognized. I'd like to thank you. Back to you, Mr. Facilitator. Thank you.
thank you very much. I will now give the panelists the opportunity to respond to one another and to what they have heard from the floor. Nobody is contesting the importance of the rule of law and that it is deeply intertwined with the enjoyment of human rights. So perhaps we can focus our attention. I invite the panelists to focus their attention on how Parliament, with the cooperation of civil society, can ensure that laws are grounded in human rights principle and applied impartially and enjoyed equally. So perhaps we can reverse the order and we hand over to the Imam Salahuddin.
Just a comment I heard several times at least, the wordings of respect for the rule of law. I think we should take it a step further and try to build appreciation for the rule of law. Otherwise, I think there is a sense of power dynamics in the word respect. Appreciation is something that is built through positive means and methods. And to be able to achieve appreciation of rule of law, I think it's key to remind ourselves of not letting the rule of law being abused, not letting freedoms being abused, because when they're abused, it undermines appreciation and it undermines the essence and need of law itself. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to comment on another key word that we heard here from many of the participants, and go back to the question to what do we actually do when the law is failing to protect the rights that it's supposed to protect and why that is the case. And following a key word, appreciation, I want to comment on the word tolerance and just bring forward that if I tolerate my wife, I should go for marriage consultation. So if we are in a situation where we are just tolerating one another and not having appreciation, as the Imam said, for one another, we are failing as a society. If we as lawmakers are just protecting the rights but not creating a cohesive society in which people appreciate one another, then society is failing as well. So if we can take the word tolerance out of our terminology and use the word appreciation, I would say from our experience, then that is what is creating trust in society, which we heard was lacking here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. First of all, I think there are a lot of challenges on the application of the rule of law regarding fraud. One of them is identity politics and polarization that are on the rise. And I think what the previous panelists just addressed, I think it's one of the main things that we need to focus on when we talk about freedom of religion or belief. It's not tolerate someone, it's to appreciate and to give room to diversity, to plurality. And I think that's what strengthens rule of law. And of course, it is very difficult in our time because of this, and it's sensitive, and it's contested, and it's difficult, but it's necessary. And I think those are the battles that we need to address very clear, very transparently. I think that against this background, we need parliamentarians to be equipped and to be also in a network with civil society, exchanging opinions, going further on the conversation of freedom of religion or belief. Because one of the things from the beginning we start saying about trust is that one of the undermined relationship of trust that has been over the years is between parliamentarians or governments or politicians in general and civil society. And we need to reconnect. We need to reconnect parliamentarians, politics to civil society in order to have a goal together in defending and advancing freedom of religion or belief for all. Thank you.
there are three areas which sometimes, if not often, are source of tension between religious and political authorities, and we need to turn them into areas for collaboration. The first one is religious literacy. Some politicians, parliamentarians, tend to think that state neutrality should lead to a neutrality in education, and so no education about religions. And I think this is a big mistake, because we need states to be neutral, but societies are never neutral. We need our societies to be inclusive. And this is why I think this is a big area of collaboration between religious and political authorities to promote religious literacy, which I mean by religious literacy, it's literacy about all religions, to ensure that ignorance and not the other is the enemy. And if we don't educate about all religions, this would lead to ignorance, and ignorance will be the enemy of living together in society. Second area of collaboration is women's rights. We know, all of us here, that in many, many cases, there are discriminations against women based on religious teaching or religious narratives. But at the same time, we have now enough theological thinking across religions that can allow to have better laws and better and fairness and justice towards women. And this is another area of collaboration. The third and last area of collaboration I propose is about minority rights, to ensure that religions and not only politics protect the sacrality of a human conscience, that there is truly no coercion in religion. And this means building inclusive societies and inclusive citizenship where every and each human being enjoy full freedom of thought and belief, even also including not believing in the dominant or majoritarian religion in a society. And this means also abandon the blasphemy laws, because blasphemy laws is against, at the same time, societies and religions themselves. Thank you.
Professor Fadi, I'm going to come back to you. You say that all religions should have rights, but there may be many politicians, there are many political contexts in which recognition is only for 1 or 3 or 7, but it's limited. So how do legislators go about widening that circle of inclusion in a practical way? How do we include all?
So thank you for the opportunity, Nandila, to dig in, this reflection. The answer in 2 words would be inclusive citizenship, and inclusive citizenship not only as a societal culture, but also as a legal framework, which means that building our societies in legal system, constitutional and legal system, based on freedom of religion and belief to all, everybody, and also going to the societal level, as I mentioned, education, women's rights, minority rights. Practically speaking, there is no contradiction of having a majoritarian community that is shaping the culture of a society somewhere. If I take the example of Egypt, it's obvious that the Islamic culture is a dominant main cultural dimension of the Egyptian society. But if this goes against the existence of the Coptic community, for example, or non-believers or other communities, this means that we are in exclusive societies. So the big challenge is for parliamentarians and also to collaborate with religious leaders, how to reflect this in constitution and legal framework. I'm not against mentioning in the constitution, if I take the example of Morocco here, the Jewish community in Morocco is such a tiny community, but symbolically such an important also presence that was mentioned in the new constitution, that it's part of the cultural framework of the country, as at the same time the other ethnic diversity or communities in the country. However, this is not enough, because as you mentioned, we are being selective. We need to be more inclusive, which means this is why we need to make freedom of religion and belief the starting point of inclusivity and not as an ending point.
Thank you for your tolerance, Archbishop Schermacher. Now over to you.
So, the first and the last. I would like to underline again that it was mentioned we need the rule of law against religious extremism, against a form of religions that destroy a society. At the same time, the state needs to protect freedom of religion and belief, which is something different. But I do not fully agree that the state does not need something similar too. I think the religions have a moral and a prophetic voice to remind the state what it is there for, that is the good for the people and not the good of individuals. So, but let me turn this into a positive thing. I think for parliamentarians especially, religious leaders, belief leaders are their best advisors. Not to take over, not to rule over them, but advisors to tell them what really is going on in society. At the same time, for religious leaders, it is very good, and often parliamentarians and politicians are their best advisors. Again, not because they want to run religions, but they can tell them a lot of things that we might overlook. If this would not be here, I would propose a global conference of parliamentarians meeting with religious leaders. But we are here. So friends, take your chance. If we do not talk, we cannot make progress. The best way to destroy a marriage is never to talk to each other. And if you don't get the couple to talk to each other, it never will improve. This is the one-time chance for us really to get to know each other. And you ask the question, small religions. It's for both sides. Parliamentarians need to get to know those small religions. Just meet them, invite them over. When they are out of the door, you can still think your thing, but get to know them personally. And it's also a religious task to the big religions. Take your small friends at your country. Get an appointment with the parliamentarian or the politician and say, I would like to come along, but I would like to bring my smaller friends, so to say. But you see, what is one of the strangest things when it comes to freedom of religion and belief, representing the largest world religion, the other large one is Islam. Christianity in many countries is the absolute majority of people. And the same religion can be a very, very small minority in the next country. And the same with Islam. In many countries like Morocco, they are the majority. In my home country, in Germany, they are a minority. So if we come together, if we work hand in hand and agree that if we both protect the minorities of other religions in our countries, we do just the most normal thing, because everyone can be big here and small there. And we want to be dealt with, as a Christian, I want to be dealt with the same way if I represent in one country the official religion, and in the next country I'm the only one of two Christians in the country, because I'm still a human being and nothing else. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. As a housekeeping, the people at the back, might you speak a bit more quietly because others can't hear? And if I hand over now to Mr. Tancano for the last word from the panel for now.
Merci, Madame la Moderatrice.
Madam Moderator, I'd like to intervene and react by adding something to talk about the limitations of the inter-religious faith dialogue, particularly for the promotion and the preservation of the rule of law and the state. When I've read the report of the Parliament on the religion and the UIP report more particularly, I noticed that most of the parliamentarians who were surveyed during this survey have had practices or are engaged in the interfaith dialogue in quite many of these countries. And when we listen to the participants here, I do realize that there are quite a number of practices. There are attempts to set up interfaith dialogue, or at least good practices to set. But when we know what we notice, it doesn't solve crises. The world currently is riddled with crises. What is happening? I think we need to raise a question. Either this interfaith dialogue is not sincere, a dialogue, or it is insufficient, or there is an effect, endogenous effect, particularly on these various states. These are the four major preoccupations that I have in mind. And so whether we in the Sahel or in Ukraine, there are crises in the Sudan. So we have two Muslim factions fighting in the Sudan, and I think all the summits, so all the countries of the in the Islamic world need to put their clout so that they bring these two warring factions to an end. We're talking about only God perhaps we can ask for forgiveness for him. But interfaith religion or dialogue, so far, either it's not sincere, or it's not non-existent, or perhaps linked to external interferences in states where crises are being waged. And so particularly the case of the Sahel that I know the representative of Senegal talked about. They are not in the Sahel, but they are in a country neighboring the Sahel. In many of the countries of the Sahel, and the MPs can testify, there is generally the Islamo-Christian dialogue that is being waged. The MPs' practices particularly focus on the promotion of the rule of law. Unfortunately, there are political interests, geopolitical interests, economic interests of outside that ban and bar this dialogue and particularly to establish peace and to establish and to have security. And so we need to focus and dig deeper into this interfaith dialogue. Thank you. Back to you, ma'am.
Okay, we return to speakers from the floor. The next three speakers will be Mr. Leo Igwe of Humanist International, followed by Ms. Natalia Martincevic of Croatia, and then Mr. Tiago Alves Pinto of...
Not Ambassador Benzo?
No, he's not. Okay. Of the University of Oxford. So do we have Mr. Igwe?
Here? I'm here. Hello? Can you hear me?
We can hear you well. Please carry on.
Okay, please.
And 2 minutes, everybody, please. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity given to us at Humanist International to be part of this important event. First of all, it is important we explore the situation of humanists in various countries if we are really committed to interfaith dialogue. Because back in my country, Nigeria, it has been increasingly difficult for us to dialogue with people of faith. In 2021, we tried to organize the first interfaith and belief dialogue in Nigeria. Many religious leaders shunned that dialogue. And what we heard was that they could not dialogue with people who are not of the book. But I want to thank the Interparliamentary Union for extending an invitation to us. And I look forward that other parliamentarians could put in place legislations that will open the space of dialogue to atheists, humanists, free thinkers, non-religious people, Because what is most important for us at the humanist community is not our religion or belief. We can always change it. We can always discard it. What is important is our humanity. So we are looking forward that parliamentarians in various countries will emulate this initiative that made it possible for us to be invited, so that the dialogue space in various countries could be open to people who have no religion, or people who are humanists, or who are atheists or free thinkers. Thank you.
Okay, so next is Ms. Martincevic of Croatia, followed by Mr. Tiago Alves Pinto, and then after that it will be Mr. Sukamta Mantam-Iharja of Indonesia. So Ms. Martincevic, please.
Dear members of parliament, dear colleagues, Croatia is a country that has committed itself to respecting the rights of its religious communities in its basic legal acts. Currently, 90 such religious communities are registered. The rights are primarily guaranteed by the highest legal act of our country, the Constitution of the Republic of Croatia. They have rights in accordance with the law on the legal status of religious communities. Religious communities receive funds for their work from the budget of the Republic of Croatia. Croatia also has a special government commission for relations with religious communities. We believe that according to the rights of members of other minority religions in the Republic of Croatia, we treat them with the maximum tolerance and support them in their work and in the performance of religious ceremonies. As a particular positive example, I would like to point out the attitude towards the Islamic community in Croatia. Islam was officially recognized as a traditional religion back in 1916, precisely by the Croatian Parliament. In connection with this, in 2016, we celebrate 100 years of Islam, an official recognized traditional religion in the Republic of Croatia. The government of the Republic of Croatia was a sponsor of that celebration. Members of the Islamic faith often highlight their position in the Republic of Croatia as an example, as a model that should be appealed in other countries in Europe, all the world, where the Muslims do not represent the majority but minority religious community. The Republic of Croatia sees its wealth in the number of different religious communities. Therefore, the government of Croatia encouraged interfaith dialogue through sponsorship. Thus, in 2020, the conference Human Brotherhood for the Foundation of the Security of Peace in the World was held in the co-organization of the Islamic community in Croatia and the Croatian Bishop Catholic Conference. Thank you.
So the next three are Mr. Tiago Alves Pinto, Mr. Mantam-Iharja of Indonesia, and then Mr. Abbas Panakal, Director of the International Interfaith Initiative. So do we have Mr. Alves Pinto? Please.
Distinguished panelists, thank you for your excellent contributions. My question relates to the defamation of religion issue that was mentioned in the panel. Between 1999 and 2011, several countries at the UN discussed the resolutions on the so-called defamation of religions. This was done to address some of the challenges already discussed today. However, nothing happened, only division. In 2011, Resolution 1618 was passed as a joint international effort to address incitement to religious hatred without resort to using blasphemy laws. Since then, several UN documents were developed, notably the Rabat Plan of Action, so Morocco is involved in that as well, the Istanbul Process, and the Faith for Rights. These documents were elaborated with several stakeholders, including civil society, academia, and experts from international organizations. My question to the panel is, why, in your opinion, states have largely overlooked these documents that are meant to address the problems that we have mentioned today? And I'm asking that because I've been researching on this topic for 12 years, and I'm still searching for answers. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we'll respond to that question after a few more speakers. So the next three are Mr. Sukamta Mantam Ihaja of Indonesia, followed by Mr. Abbas Panakal, and then it will be Mr. Pedro Roque of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean. So do we have Mr. Sukamta of Indonesia?
Thank you for the opportunity. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Peace be upon us all. As a country with a population of over 270 million people and 1,128 ethnic groups speaking 741 distinct languages, in Indonesia, several religions and faith coexist and prosper. Indonesia is also a country with the largest Muslim population in the world, and at the same time the third largest democracy in the world, which conforms to a democratic political system in which the parliament includes numerous political factions and represent the desire of people who follow various religions and faith. The Constitution also fully guarantees religious freedom, as stated in Article 28 and 29, which emphasizes on freedom of every citizen to embrace their own religion and worship according to their religion and faith. In short, Indonesia's principle recognizes and protects all religion and faith that emerge in Indonesia. However, while doing so, we recognize that the rule of law remains a key priority of the life of nation and state of Indonesia. As a diverse nation, we know that variety is a blessing and a benefit, but it's also a burden. Horizontal tension frequently overlaps the diversity. Similarly, it is regarded as a gift and an advantage because it contributes to Indonesia's status as a country rich in diverse cultures. In order to preserve mutual trust and understanding across religion and faith, the right to freedom of religion or faith must be practiced responsibly with respect for the right of others and without disrupting public order. As a result, supporting the rule of law is critical. Members of Parliament have the task of guaranteeing the harmony among religions in Indonesia continues, which is why the Indonesian House of Representatives passed Law Number 7 in 2012 on preventing social conflict that shall serve as the principal umbrella in resolving social conflict, specifically those that incorporate religion. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next three are Mr. Abbas Panakal, followed by Mr. Pedro Roque, and then after that it will be Mr. Mustafa Field, the Director of Faiths Forum for London. So do we have Mr. Panakal? Mr. Panakal in the room? Okay, so we move to Mr. Pedro Roque of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean.
I'm right here on the far left. I'm right here on the far left.
Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. It's a great honor for me to have the opportunity to represent the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean today at this invaluable gathering enabling dialogue and sharing. At the outset, I want to say one word to share our grief for the victims of the Jewish festival on the island of Jerba, Tunisia, last month. This traditional religious festival brings men of faith, men of peace, and scholars from around the world. The attack against pilgrims who gather in peace was simply shocking. As we all see, there are still so many valid reasons to gather and talk about peace. Cultivate long-lasting peace and fostering inclusive and sustainable prosperity are the main objectives of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean. By building bridges between countries, communities, and individuals, parliamentary diplomacy plays a crucial role. It nurtures a pluralistic dialogue, strengthens cooperation, and promotes mutual understanding. Last year, a PAM delegation came to Morocco and met with Mr. Abadi. We exchanged particularly on youth and how youth can be a vector towards peace if deeply engaged in their communities. Here in Morocco, as earlier in Italy, PAM organized a number of specialized meetings on the responsibility of political and religious leaders in countering violence, extremism, and radicalizations. The results were interesting, but the commitments of our institutions cannot be limited to a conference. Our actions must continue all the time and involve regularly civil society and institutions. Our visit to the School of Ulama was very instructive, and I wish to congratulate Morocco for this program. Ladies and gentlemen, in closing, let me state that you can count on the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean to play its role as a peace-seeking and peace-nurturing regional institution. Thank you so much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. So the next three speakers will be Mr. Mustafa Field, followed by Ms. Heriknaz Tigranyan of Armenia, followed by Mr. Yassine Berry, le Président des Chantiers Sociaux Marocains. So we have Mr. Field, and yes, a reminder that it's 2 minutes per intervention, please.
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to thank the IPU and His Majesty King Mohammed IV's Parliament for hosting this conference. My name is Mustafa Field. I'm the director for a charity called the Faith Forum for London. And I wanted to really emphasize the importance of religious literacy being a key driver in supporting parliamentarians, policymakers, in creating a more stable, inclusive, and productive nation. Because often social cohesion can make our economies stronger. This is in the interest of our great nations. And it's at a time with economic crisis, we must see this work part and parcel of strengthening our nations. We live in an interconnected world where religion plays a significant role in many of our lives. And it's crucial for parliamentarians to understand the deep understanding of how religion motivates people. Often, we see the rule of law is foreign to religion. It's not something that is characterized as part of our religious belief. However, my research and our work has really seen that the rule of law is deeply embedded in religious belief across different faiths, but particularly because we're here today in Marrakesh, and the declaration has a strong rooting in religion. Fadi mentioned this, the importance of understanding the religious literacy when we're looking to combat violence against women. Often it is the theology and the deep understanding that we can find in our religious traditions and the values that we find that bind our communities together that can help us underpin this and then challenge this. And so I just want to emphasize that using theology and religious literacy is key in embedding this, and it is not foreign to us. So we must deepen that understanding. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so the next three speakers, Ms. Heriknaz Tigranyan of Armenia, Mr. Yassine Berry, then it'll be Senator Farouk Naik of Pakistan. So do we have Ms. Tigranyan?
Thank you. Dear colleagues, first of all, let me thank our Moroccan host for the excellent organization of this very important conference. I am representing the Republic of Armenia, a country which was the first in the world to proclaim Christianity as a state religion. I am underscoring this fact within the context of our conference to state that the respect for human rights and their protection is supranational and supra-religious. It is a universal value. The rule of law, equality of everybody before the law, is the main pillar and one of the basic principles of the legal state. Unfortunately, some states don't respect the rule of law, don't even implement the decisions of the international institutions, and all this does not entail any consequences and responsibility. In my view, this is an impermissible double standards and retreat from democracy. In particular, the International Court of Justice applied an interim measure towards Azerbaijan by forcing to open the Lachin corridor. About 4 months have passed, and this decision is not implemented. Moreover, Azerbaijan is told that checkpoint on the Lachin corridor, thus fully controlling it and blocking the lifeline of 120,000 people in Nagorno-Karabakh and creating a humanitarian disaster. Azerbaijan considers itself above the international law and justice, neglecting also the clear calls of the international community on demanding to open the corridors. At present, the world, including our region, is facing new challenges. Since the war justifiably focuses on the war in Ukraine, Azerbaijan seizes the opportunity and continues its aggressive policy of territorial claims toward Armenia's sovereign territory. Over the last 2 years, Azerbaijan has initiated military provocation on a regular basis and occupied 150 kilometers of our state territory.
If you would be kind enough to bring it to an end, I'd be
The authoritarian
grateful.
system is a challenging democracy, which should not be tolerated, and the aggressor must be restrained. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. The IPU told me they chose me because I could be strict with time, so don't let me let them down. Next speaker, please.
So next three are Mr. Yassine Berry, Senator Nayak of Pakistan, and then it will be Archimandrite Emmanuel Ukana of the World Council of Churches. So do we have Mr. Berry in the room? Okay, so we'll move to Senator Nayak, please.
Thank you, please. As a constitutional norm, religious harmony not only directs state action involving management of religious diversity, but also has potential to legitimate state action. Religious harmony is not only a constitutional principle, but also has become an institutionalized social reform. Prevalence of idea of harmony as a legal principle is reflected in many statute books. Pakistan Penal Code contains provisions that criminalizes acts prejudicial to maintenance of harmony, including religious harmony. Laws should highlight importance of religious harmony as a legal, political, and constitutional norm. Religious pluralism is best managed and maintained through rule of law. As a constitutional norm, it should direct state action involving management of religious diversity. Interfaith harmony and rule of law are fundamental principles for building a just and inclusive society. In a world characterized by diverse religious beliefs and cultural background, it is essential to promote mutual respect, understanding, and cooperation among different faiths. Pakistan, as a multi-religion society, has taken several steps to ensure interfaith harmony. Constitution of Pakistan ensures in its preamble fundamental rights, including right to faith, worship, and association. To further this cause, Parliament of Pakistan consists of both non-Muslim members and religious scholars and experts. These provisions have been instrumental in creating a bridge not only between religious leaders and parliament, but also in its judicial system. Interfaith harmony today faces many challenges in the world due to religious extremism, lack of dialogue and understanding, historical and cultural perspectives, social and economic disputes, misinterpretation and misrepresentation of faith. In my view, I propose the following proposals for the purpose of the Parliament to pass necessary laws in this regard. A. Establishment of an apex body to register and regulate functions of all religious schools. B. Establishment of a regulatory body with representations from all religious to regulate all religious institutions, including mosques, temples, gurdwaras, and churches. C. Review and revision of policies and practices to ensure basic human rights for all as equal citizens. D. Implementation of existing policies and cultural practices for promoting religious and interfaith harmony through relevant laws. E.
I hope there aren't so many letters.
30 seconds only, 30 seconds, please. Create a reporting mechanism for cases of discrimination against religious minorities, representation of all religions in curriculum, designing broad and implement one curriculum in all schools and institutions, especially of public sector, inclusion of interfaith harmony component in curriculum from preschool level, promote religious tourism, social and cultural gatherings, and lastly, allocation of resources for development of minorities across board. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take two final speakers and then we'll let the panel have their concluding remarks. So Emmanuel Yukana next, and then after that it will be Mr. Ceyhun Mamadov of Azerbaijan. So do we have Emmanuel Yukana? Okay, please.
السادة الحضور سلموا الجميع.
I'd like to greet you. I represent Azerbaijan. I would like to say that the lands of Azerbaijan has always been a place whereby all members of the community lived in peace. Azerbaijan always tries to preserve the multicultural policies. We organize quite many conferences when we talk on this very important issue. And currently in Azerbaijan, we have Christians, Jews, and we have other religions existing in cohabitation with the rest of the community. And it's quite important to say not just the religions are really living together, but then we have communities living in Azerbaijan in quite peace. And so the parliament in Azerbaijan has a role to play in fostering the various cultures, and I would like to thank Morocco for taking this initiative to convene this important. I'd like to react to what my colleague from Armenia, particularly that Azerbaijan aggressed Armenia, and this is false. These lands that were really Armenia destroyed all the mosques that it captured a long time ago, and which Azerbaijan recaptured. And we seek peace, but we see that Armenia continues on the path of war, and this is very at least Azerbaijan has not transgressed in any way Armenia. Thank you.
Thank you. So our final speaker from the floor, Mr. Mamadov of Azerbaijan.
No, we've had that speaker, so we're going.
Oh, sorry.
We're going back to this speaker.
Okay, so we have Mr. Yukana. Okay, he's there, sorry. Yeah, please. Can we have the technicians help to get the microphone working over here? Could you try a microphone next to you somewhere, please?
Sorry, there isn't a roving mic. I think you have to move to a seat where there is a mic, or perhaps you want to speak in the next panel. And I literally have 1 minute and 7 panelists on top of this. Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead.
أنا الخوري عمان يوخنا من العراق مدير منظمة كابني.
I'm from Iraq. Today I represent the Council of Churches, and which I would like to convey the greetings of the Council of Churches of Iraq to you. And I'd like to take advantage of this opportunity to thank Morocco for really organizing this quite important meeting, which is quite important in its content and also in its form. I would like to thank you all. When we say dialogue or interfaith dialogue, then the prerequisite for having an interfaith dialogue is that there is diversity for any dialogue to be comprehensive, there is need to focus on diversity, and there is a recognition of this diversity. And should we go against these, then this dialogue is going to be lacking, or particularly in my country, Iraq, which is known for its diversity as far as religions and cultures are concerned. And it's unfortunate that in Iraq there are components that are indigenous components, but then they have not been recognized as such. How can we have a positive interfaith dialogue without recognition and recognizing the various components of which the community of Iraq is made up of? The Al-Baha'in, more particularly the community, is quite present, but it is not recognized as such, the Baha'i community particularly. And the other bullet point which I would like to share with you, in order for a dialogue to be constructive and positive, and then there is need to treat people on an equal footing, and particularly if we want to have a stronger dialogue, then people need to be on an equal footing, otherwise it's going to be imbalanced. In my country, Iraq particularly, while we try to have dialogue, there is, and then the components are not there, particularly, and Article 26 of the Iraqi constitution, more particularly, and then it talks about the young, anyone really who changes his religion, then children need to be groomed.
We're running against the tea and coffee break. Very briefly, there was such a rich range of contributions addressing youth, blasphemy, the blessing and the burden of diversity, the necessity to include non-believers and non-citizens. Perhaps we could incorporate it in our discussions from now on, that we're not exclusively talking about citizens, nor are we exclusively talking about the religious, but also non-believers. Literacy, the recognition and registration of religion and belief communities, and all of this within the framework of addressing the challenges and good practices in upholding the rule of law by parliamentarians. So we appreciate also the concrete recommendations. Perhaps, Madam Speaker, I can start with you, and 6 of the 7 panelists will take the floor very quickly.
Muchísimas gracias. Quería trasladar 5 ideas telegráficas después de escuchar todas las intervenciones.
Well, thanks very much indeed. It's quite an interesting debate, particularly that political people need to participate in the living together, and they need to be involved in boosting tolerance and participating in appreciation, as has been recalled by our friend Imam. And so the second idea, focusing on education and conveying the values of tolerance and understanding and building trust, living together. Education is quite important. It's quite necessary to know the other, because getting to know the other is the first stage in order to love the other. And so third important idea, our communities and societies, they need positive leadership. So we are communities that have lost referentials. We have lost the referential, and this is the reason why we need to underscore the role played by politics and politicians, but also the role played by religious leaders in forging and building a propitious environment. So this means that the political and religious dimensions need to play quite an important role in order to be recognized as such in a positive way, in order to contribute in a better way to establish peace. Fourth bullet point, the state of law and boosting democracy. And so we need to make sure democracy is not guaranteed, and we can backpedal on democracy. And this is the reason why we need to strengthen a democratic community without which we cannot make headway. And so the religious freedom and freedom of thinking are quite important. And one final bullet point, which are those who believe in the force of dialogue and those who believe in mutual respect in order to really mutually appreciate each other. This seems to me an indispensable path to move along. We need to unite because I remain convinced that we can fight against the intolerance and those who preach. We need to have protected communities, and this is why we need to align ourselves, particularly so that the voice of the most powerful, the voice of the coexistence, is the most heard voice. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may, I have a request from every single person in this room. Passing laws can be challenging. Passing hope can be contagious. I'd like to ask everyone here to be ambassadors of hope. Spread positive examples that you see through the platforms that you have, and realize how important that can be. And each of you knows what those examples are. Create trust and appreciation through those examples, and in doing so, it will also help the challenges that you face in passing the laws with all the good intent that we hear in this room. Thank you very much.
I just wanted to comment on the first speaker that was expressing difficulty in organizing dialogue in their country. I think sometimes there is a need of depoliticization of religious dialogue. The state or the government needs to sometimes step away and let the religions themselves, just being a facilitator and not being the direct organizer or setting of the agenda. I think the trust needs to be built up from beneath and not from above in different kinds of pressures. I also think that there needs to be from different parties sense of humility and humbleness. You mentioned that it is for you, belief is a very easy thing. You can just change it, you can remove it, and so on. And I think that is maybe how you feel and experience things. I think that you should be humble and have some humility towards how others perceive their religious or their faith and conviction. And I think we could actually step away from even using the word religion. I think the word religion maybe confines us too much in our modern day. We could use other words like worldviews, like we have a word in Swedish called livsåskådning, view of life. It doesn't necessarily have to be limited to religious or traditional religious in itself. Lastly, I would say that, because they were mentioned as well, that some countries tolerate one religion, some 3, some 7 religions and similar. I think this is a part of history and tradition. However, with modern day society where it's very global, you have everything that you have in the world, you have in local communities, this is something that will change, and I think we can use each other's experiences. So if we have, for instance, Muslims interacting with Christians and Jews in the Middle East, you will have Muslims interacting with Hindus in India and Pakistan and these countries. The experiences they have could be borrowed and appreciated in the countries that have recently got Hindus, for instance. So I mean, we can borrow of each other and learn of each other's experiences and from history. And I also think that going beyond just the religious context and the setting, we have, for instance, in the Islamic tradition, very famous the Hilf al-Fudul, which was a kind of agreement that was beyond just the Abrahamic religions or the people of scripture and similar. It was something that was even wanted to engage in when it came to Muslims and even what was defined as pagans. So you have examples in history, I think, which will be able to help us broaden the definitions and the terminology that we're maybe used to due to tradition and history. Thank you.
As we speak about religion, let it make me ample clear what I was talking about is what two of the people sitting here have in their name, the UN Special Rapporteur of Freedom of Religion or Belief, yeah? And the same with the parliamentarian groups, yeah? So, I mean, that should be a given. We don't talk about any point system in which we say whether something is a good or bad religion or whether it's religious or all on your belief. That does not matter. We are talking about the deepest inner convictions human beings have. Yeah? And because it is their most and inner and deepest conviction, we cannot tell ahead of time. This is how they have to look like, otherwise we don't accept them. We have a one-time chance sitting here, and this is my call. On the one side, we have many religious leaders here. Not all religions know each other well enough. So beside the purpose of the whole conference, let us take the chance here as Religions for Peace and all the friends we have invited to get to know each other better with the goal to solve the problems we have discussed here. The same among the parliaments. A lot of parliaments do not know enough about how religions are handled in other countries. This is your one-time chance here, not to read in Wikipedia, but to get first-hand knowledge from other countries, how the problems are, how they are handled. And then the two groups going for more unity and wisdom can engage with each other. And let me say, for the religious leaders, it is our people, it is the followers of the religions and the beliefs, it is your citizens that expect you to be in communication with religious and beliefs leaders. Yeah? If we don't do it, we leave the fight to the media or even to the street. Let us talk.
I would like first to thank you, Nazila, for facilitating this dialogue, and would like to share with you one frustration and one practical recommendation. My frustration is that since 2016, this is my 5th event I attend in Marrakesh, and all of them were on freedom of religion and belief or inclusive citizenship, and I never had the opportunity to visit this beautiful city. So the city of Marrakesh is becoming for me not just the beautiful historic city, but related to those great values. And the idea here is to thank Morocco for this leading role on this agenda and to encourage the country to continue in this role, and also to continue making from Marrakesh maybe a global capital for freedom of religion and belief and inclusive citizenship. And my practical recommendation is for the IPU and Religions for Peace and maybe other organizations who would like to join, I'm speaking on behalf also of my organization, Globe Ethics, is to continue this dialogue beyond this conference, this meeting, maybe by creating a working group where we can work together in a smaller group, gathering, identifying the good practices and working on recommendations for policymakers and religious leaders. I would be happy to contribute to this process too. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's been mentioned, but the scope of the right of freedom of religion and belief, of course, includes the right not to believe, and sometimes we just forget it. And I think that also goes when we pass, how we pass better laws, and parliamentarians need to have to be equipped, need to have the literacy and training in human rights and freedom of religion or belief in specific, to pass better laws and to identify when a law can be threatful to freedom of religion or belief. I think we all remember, and we should remember constantly, that human rights are interdependent and indivisible. So we cannot shop human rights and take one and not the other. One set of rights cannot be enjoyed fully without the other. And that is something that is very important when we address freedom of religion or belief or other human rights. And also to remember that human rights protects individuals, people. It doesn't protect a specific religion or a specific belief. And that is important in the construction of pluralism and diversity. So I just think that this conversation needs to go further. I agree with Professor Doe that we need to continue digging and deepening. And we need to bring this discussion also into parliaments, maybe into caucuses, and I think that that worked a lot in many countries. Caucuses on freedom of religion or belief that work together, not just parliamentarians, but also with civil society and religious or faith leaders. Thank you very much.
What an excellent and thought-provoking first high-level panel we've had. I ask the forgiveness of IPU for being 15 minutes late, but they have conceded to you that the break will be extended to 4:45, but the next panel will start at 4:45 sharp, and I hope you'll be here. Please, let's have a round of applause for the excellent panelists.